Um, what are we talking about? The history of this particular lake. I've been here since 2002. That's when we moved and we built a house here in Royal Linklade. And when we came, there was very little water in the lake, just partly due to the lack of rainfall in the preceding years. Then we did have some rains. I think there was a drought for 3 years. In 2005, we had a severe, rather intense rainfall, and the lake filled up to its brim. But just before that, a few months before that, the state government had given this piece of land to a central government institution close by, and they had been given 18 acres of this land to develop part of their campus. So that's when some civic-minded individuals and civic-minded institutions stepped in and talked to the institutes concerned, and talked to the LDA, the Lake Development Authority, and also the media. The media was very I think, very supportive, and published quite a bit, both in Prajavani, Deccan Herald, the Hindu, highlighting the value of lakes and that it should remain lakes and should not be converted to trees. Some folks are justifying it by saying, water bodies, we're going to plant 40% with tree cover. But I think the arguments should be that lakes are water bodies and wetlands, and not that you just don't convert everything to trees. So that was an interesting learning during that time, and I think people were not aware of the value of lakes. Since the floods of 2005, I believe, there's a downstream of this, there is the Navy layout, which also has a stem from Hebbal. The overflow channel comes at that side. So when this overflowed, this is connected to Jakur Lake and then Yelanka Lake. When this system overflowed, you had flooding in that just here, close by, about half a kilometer from here, downstream. And there are some vivid pictures of people in this ex-Navy officers layout, actually going around in a boat.
Wow.
Yeah, in 2005. Just here, Navy layout. And that's because these two systems flooded. And this has not been silted in I don't know how many decades. So it's a very shallow lake, Rachenahalli Lake, and but a relatively pollution-free lake, just because the development hasn't increased enough to send enough sewage into the lake. So I've seen kids from the neighboring villages of Dasarali, Rachenahalli, Srirampura actually swim pretty much every day in the afternoons. People wash their clothes in the lakes. The water has been pretty unpolluted. The main pollution is coming from Sakar Nagar, Amrutali. The Amrutali lake is very polluted, and the sewage comes into the lake on the west side. And I think unless the sewage is treated, our lake re-engineering, redevelopment is really only half of the solution. I think we definitely need to, a better system, policies, practices, both from the resident scale to ward to entire city, in the way we deal with our sewage. Because otherwise, if we're not polluting a particular lake, we're polluting our drainage systems and older streams that run out of this Bengaluru watershed, the plateau watershed. And anyway, coming to now talking about the development of lakes, I think there are three things that one must look for. One is heterogeneous depth. I think one should not talk about the fish pool kind of a thing, because different fish, aquatic plants, and birds like lakes with heterogeneous depth. So we must plan to have varying depths in our lakes. Then an important another consideration is edges. We need to learn how to treat our edges to mimic natural habitats with vegetation, with rocks. And what is very encouraging about this lake, as you can see around this island, they're actually using natural boulders to ring that island, and that is a very positive development in the way these engineers are looking at treating edges. Again, there's a lot of information available on these things. It's not like rocket science. There's tons of information, and today with the internet and all of that access, information and knowledge is not the limiting factor. I think it's just the will, the vision, the imagination that people have. So that's it's sewage, treating sewage. It is heterogeneous depth and dealing with the edges, all kinds of edges, whether it's the island edges, it's the perimeter edges. Edges can be treated in various ways. And there are landscape architects who have good designs for these that are not very expensive. So I think those are important things. The other thing I was telling you earlier is that the people in the vicinity of the lakes should care for their lakes, should be aware of, what damages the lake, the value of the lake, the biodiversity that visit the lake, that are resident in the lake. A lot of fish. I think a lot of time we talk only about birds, but there are also a lot of native fishes that are there. There are also fast-growing exotic fishes that are seeded by the fisheries department. But we know very little about fish diversity or insect biodiversity that is required for birds. Because the birds come and feed on these things. Some of them just come as migrants. I think it's a rich ecosystem that we don't. I think we undervalue them as a city, I think, and particularly local residents. We'd rather have it as a recreational area. So we don't see. That's fine, but I think there are other values as well. And local livelihoods are also important. If people don't use it to wash their clothes, they're going to be using what? Either Kaveri water or precious mined water. So I think just as we allow space for Ganesha idols, we should have spaces for local people to wash. We should have space for local people to swim. So that is a fundamental right, I think, that these local people have. So they can't pay money and go to the swimming pools, and this is just an incredible resource for recreation, and it should always be a public resource. I think that's so important. Anyway, I think I'm done.